Welcome to the Workforce Playbook, a podcast hosted by Everywhere English. We help companies grow by upskilling their international employees through language and cultural training. I'm Kate, and in this podcast, I chat with leaders shaping today's workplace. They are sharing real stories about communication, culture, safety, and performance. What's worked, what hasn't worked, and what they've learned along the way. No hypotheticals, no buzzwords, just honest conversations. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Workforce Playbook. Today on our episode, we have Nadia Luke with us, a HR professional whose experience spans across Ireland, Australia, and Germany. She is working at a little bit of a complex time because she works in a cybersecurity and IT company, formerly known as CyberArk, but has been recently acquired and now known as Palo Alto Networks. Massive company, Nadia, to say the least. 20,000 employees. That isn't easy. And I know you have, I suppose you manage your own region. So just tell us a little bit about the region you manage at the moment. If you just walk us through the region that you're working with at the moment.
Yeah. So I'm the HR generalist, essentially looking after the DACH and Eastern European region, as well as the Benelux and Nordics countries, where I look from everything across the whole employee life cycle, from onboarding to offboarding, and anything in between. On the side, I also look after compliance, health and safety, people development, literally anything that has to do with our employees.
So just a few things in just a few countries.
Just a few things in a few countries, yes.
Okay, brilliant. So I know obviously with a company that size and so many regions to manage, every day will not look the same. And with all those onboarding, offboardings, every day could look different. But is there a way to describe a good day for you? Is there when you're coming home from work and you say, wow, that was a great day?
Yeah. For me personally, it would be a day where I can say I've learned something new or I've uncovered something I didn't know before.
Mhm.
And a good day generally is when I can solve any sort of problem that people had, or I can align things that the business has been struggling with to just make things easier for people going forward.
Absolutely. And how long actually, Nadia, have you been with the company?
So I started in this role in January 2025. So
Mhm.
at that point, this HR generalist role was created completely new.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was not just here in Germany. We also created the role in Spain, France, and other locations across EMEA. And yeah, so it's been a year, and then the recent acquisition happened literally just a few weeks ago.
So busy time.
Definitely, lots of change.
Lots of change, but change is good.
It is. Lots
Change
of
is good.
opportunities too.
Absolutely. And in general, in the HR and learning and development space, and especially because you have experience in Ireland and Australia and in Germany, how have you seen the workforce evolve in the different companies from the time you kind of started in the space until now? How has it changed over the last couple of years?
Hmm. I would say it's changed a few times. Especially as we all know, obviously COVID happened and that had a massive impact on everything. Overall, I would say that I have observed people and workplaces becoming more comfortable with being essentially global citizens, and
Mhm.
people, traveling and working or living anywhere and working for a place somewhere else. Um, Even my own example, I worked for my company in Australia a while ago, but came to Germany to do my master's, and it was probably never as easy if COVID hadn't happened.
Yeah.
So from that aspect, I think it has become more colorful, let's say.
Yeah.
You have colleagues everywhere. As a challenging side, though, being so remote and not knowing your colleagues, not sitting with them every day, it's also stopped that kind of learning from each other in terms of that diversity. So, you have all these trainings, we've all done them, how to communicate with different people, different cultures, but it seems like very theoretical. I think we're
Yeah.
missing a little bit the practice just because we're not doing it naturally. And I think that has definitely become a bit more challenging, and we haven't been able to solve that completely yet.
Yeah. And it's good in so many ways because it gives people the flexibility and um I suppose you're open to more talent and all
Yeah,
those type of things. But I would agree with you. I think there's nothing like human connection. So I think I might have a solution for you, Nadia. I think you should just have yearly meetups in different countries. That could be fun.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah. And I suppose that is a challenge. That is absolutely a challenge for, as you said, peer to peer learning. So if you, right now, if you are doing training or learning and development, is it just looking at it practically? Would it be through Zoom or would it be through a Zoom room? Is that how it works, or webinars?
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
We do have face-to-face onboarding sessions at
Okay.
times. We try to do things face to face, also without uh, a specific, I suppose, business outcome other than getting together.
Mhm.
So here, for example, we in Düsseldorf, where I am based, we try to do a monthly get together, even if that's just lunch. So we
Yeah.
get people to come in at least on one day and not two people Mondays, three people
Yeah.
Tuesdays, but actually try to get everyone on the same day. And yeah, the rest mostly though, especially with being so international. I mean, it is expensive. And as much as I think people have to remember the value of being together, we have also become a little bit, I don't want to say lazy, but maybe comfortable in the fact that we all have different things we have to do. We have children, we have
Yeah.
partners, we have the household, and that work life balance is much easier when you don't have to go to the office. I definitely understand that and I have empathy, but I do find we need to push that again to be like, one day a week in the office is not really the
Too
worst
much to
thing, and
ask.
preferably more days than one. But I
Mhm.
think at the very least, you can say, look, that is something I should plan into my day and into my week and try to meet up with my colleagues.
I agree. You just have to wait for the washing until tomorrow. But
Yes,
it's
yes.
especially with, say, such a multicultural team.
Mhm,
If you're at home remote working, I'm just thinking about like English language here and learning and development. You are like, unless you're having a Zoom meeting, you're more than likely thinking in your own language,
mhm.
you know? And when you're versus being in the office, when you're surrounded by everyone speaking the same language, you're forced to think and to speak in the language and learn different things. So you are missing that element when you are uh, remote working. Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. So in terms of trainings then and the multi-language element of it all, is it all conducted through English or through German, or how does it work?
So the company's business language is definitely English.
Okay.
Even here at the office, we have a few colleagues who don't have German as their mother tongue.
Okay.
And whenever they are in the office, you can tell, even if there's four German speakers and one colleague from a non-German speaking country, the conversation tends to switch over to English.
Okay.
Sometimes to the detriment of that person because they're like, look, I do need to learn the language. I want to be surrounded with German, but it's difficult even for us to
Yeah.
not to try and be polite and accommodate. But yeah, I think as long as there's not only German speakers, communication is in English, including emails, because
Okay.
when you write emails really to a big group, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And especially for me in HR, I want to make sure people really understand what I'm saying
Well,
and
you're
they really understand what they need to do. So it's just sometimes bilingual when we have a quick thing, but yeah,
okay.
usually it would be English.
Okay. And when you say you manage the different regions, so like for
Mhm.
example the Nordics and Eastern Europe and things like that, as teams grow or since you've been in the company, managing all these different languages, have you seen any challenges? Have you seen any communication challenges as the team as you start training with multiple nationalities, and how have they impacted
Mm.
um, the training session, or how they impacted work in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, the remote working has its own challenges.
Hmm.
One of the things that I find the most, yeah, frustrating and challenging is we all do these courses on communication and how to have difficult conversations. And one of the first things you learn is, don't be confrontational, don't sit across from each other in the room. But then put that in a virtual context, you don't have a choice.
Yeah,
We're on a Zoom call and I'm face to face. I can't sit to the side, or
yeah,
I can't watch your body language.
yeah,
Especially also when you're on the phone or on Zoom as well, accents become much more of a challenge than they would be if you're
yeah.
face to face. Even for native English speakers, I've had a colleague, he was Scottish, and half the time I would have to ask him, "Can you please send me an email after the conversation just to make sure I really understood what you were talking about?" And that is definitely a much bigger challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it's a learning curve. The
Yeah.
solutions don't have to be. I did another podcast this morning, and I was speaking to a guest, and she was a HR manager of a food manufacturing company. And she said to me, which I thought was very insightful, you don't need to have all the answers as a HR manager today. And I think everyone feels under pressure
Yeah,
to have the right answers. You can learn them, you can go through them, you can fail, you can learn again. And thought it was really nice. You don't have to have every single answer today, or
correct.
every single solution. And I think it's something that everybody should take on board.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then would you have many team meetings, Nadia, online?
Yes, I think most of our team meetings are online.
Uh-huh.
So my personal direct HR team, for example, is completely distributed.
Okay.
We've met once now, really in person, where we all came together and we all flew to our office in London. But normally, as I said, I was the only person responsible for my region, and the others are located in their own regions. We would only come together virtually.
Okay.
Um, Similar then with my actual teams in region, they would have monthly kind of all hands or update meetings or regular team meetings within their smaller teams. And I would say 90% of the time that is remote.
Okay. Okay. And in those kind of settings, especially when there's a different few languages and cultures, how do you ensure that everyone's voice is heard, or everyone gets to say, if you're not, as a person, even in your own language, some people might find it difficult to speak up, right? So in a second language, for those type of personalities, it must be really, really hard, you know? So how can you share some wisdom or any insight on how to know how to help people to ensure that their voice is heard in these kind of settings? Is there any magic trick?
I probably have to agree with your other guests and say we don't have all the
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah.
I don't have the magic. What I have found in the past and what I really try to do and try to coach people leaders when I speak to them as well is to first of all make everyone feel comfortable. Like
Mhm.
if you're running the meeting or if you're inviting to a meeting, then you are the one person who's responsible for making it a safe space and ensuring people know they can speak up. At the same time, again, it depends if it's a team meeting or a meeting with people you don't know,
Mhm.
but you should, as a manager, know your individual team members to understand. One person is more shy, they may not speak up at
Yeah.
all, even if I give them the space. So you need to provide a different avenue to say, put something in the chat or give me
Yeah.
something in advance and I can bring it up for you. Um, and likewise, there's people, they just communicate in different ways, whatever that is. You need to ensure that not just that they speak up, but also that whatever they say has actually been properly understood and
Mhm.
received by the rest. Just to make sure that they're not frustrated and stop speaking up later because they feel misunderstood.
Yeah. And actually, there's a in I suppose English learning. There's a technique called using CCQs,
Hmm.
and it's concept checking questions. So basically, what that means is, and it's exactly what you said there, but basically, it's never to kind of get to make sure they fully understand. You never want a yes or no answer, so you want them to relay it back to you. So if I say something in a meeting and I say, "Do you understand?" and somebody goes, "Yeah," how do you know they actually understand, you know?
Yeah.
So you might say something along the lines of, "Oh, could you tell us what we went through there? Or could you clarify what just happened there?" And by getting another person to relay it back, you're really checking the concept and that people understand. So even, yeah, even using something like it's a small technique like CCQs in team meetings can be really beneficial with a lot of languages, because like everything, it's so easy to go, yeah, nod the head. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know?
that's very true.
Yeah. Um, okay, and then looking into the future of the company, Nadia, and the future of the HR world and the learning and development world, and obviously technology. You're in cybersecurity and IT, right? But technology, AI, everything, it is changing the way we operate. Absolutely, It's changing the way businesses operate. Um, in a crazy way. So as for HR managers listening today, or people working in that space, learning and development space, managing multilingual teams or international workforces, what skills do you think people are going to need in the next couple of years? Is there any particular skill they should be working on that's going to make their life and job easier?
Mm. To be honest, I think for me, what's most important is the ability to break down complex challenges
Hmm.
and essentially making them into something tangible and relatable, because even languages become more complex. We think about when I learned English, there was no such thing as inclusive language. You didn't
Yes.
address
No.
the group of people as hello team. You might say, hey guys.
Yeah,
And today I would no longer say that
I know.
because, women may feel excluded. So even the very basic thing of language becomes a lot more complex. And especially for someone learning a language or speaking in not their mother tongue, that's even more intimidating because you
Yeah.
don't want to make this mistake. And yeah, I mean, even for me, sometimes I'm not sure. I wrote my master thesis on inclusive leadership, and I'm still struggling to really
Yeah.
understand how do we do it properly every day
It's changing.
without it's a monster, right? And I'm definitely not saying it's wrong. I think we need to work on these things, but we also, especially leaders, need to have the skill to break down this very complex things like language, inclusivity, culture, preferences into something that's actually practical and relatable, so people are not scared of it.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think that's definitely one major skill. And as you just mentioned, I think it's also important that we focus very much on those nuances that are not just words, but the things between the lines, right? We need to be able to read between the lines and understand, okay, sure, ChatGPT can write me a perfect response to this email, but what is actually between the lines can be a lot more insightful and important than the actual email that I'm just reading.
That is so on the ball. That's one of our values actually with Everywhere English, is when we provide our service to companies. Some companies will turn around and say, "Oh, sure, we can just use Google Translate or ChatGPT. We don't need to. We have a translator. You know." And I always say to people, "Okay, but if you were to walk into a business meeting and you use Duolingo for 12 weeks or a year, are you going to be able to communicate your message or read in between the lines or understand the cultural nuances in the room? Absolutely not." And I don't think, I hope to God there's not a day where an AI would take over that. But it's just about understanding human behavior and cultural nuances and reading in between the lines. And as you said, every leader should have it, and it should be trickling down to the team, as much as you can. But I completely agree with that there now. Yeah, it's not just translation, is it? It's culture and communication.
Yeah, there's a reason why there is a translator and an interpreter, because I think those are two very different things.
Yep.
They're two very different skills, and even my husband is Australian and he's learning German, and sometimes he says to me, "Why do you have this one word, but it means three different things?" And I said, well, because it depends on the context, and yeah, in every language, I think you will find that, and even for me, sometimes there's no, it's frustrating, but in German, there is no translation for awkward. And I'm in awkward situations all the time, and I cannot express that in German properly because
What? That
you
is so
can't.
interesting. So
Yeah.
what do you say? What do? You just don't use that?
You have to describe it, right? It's maybe uncomfortable or it's
Yeah.
daunting, it's strange, it's weird, but it's not the
Awkward.
real meaning of awkward. We just do not have this word. And
Cringe. Cringe is another word for it,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of, again, there's probably lots of words to describe it, but there's none that really hits it on the head.
That is so interesting. That is, you learn something new every day now. That is very interesting. And is your husband finding it hard to learn German? Just out of interest from
I
English.
would lie if I said no.
Okay.
I think there's different frustrations at every
Yeah,
level, right? At the start, it's just learning the words, and then it's getting the grammar right, and then it's
I
also
know.
the different dialects. I'm not sure how. Yeah, I reckon my grandparents are his final boss because they, have a very heavy rural accent,
Yeah.
and it's
Good test.
difficult. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very interesting about but it's so true. It's about context learning, and we always say that as well. We actually have modules based on context learning, and not just direct translation. And I've never heard it described there, like you said as well. There's a reason for a translator and there's a reason for an interpreter. So I'm totally going to steal that if that's okay,
Go
because
for it.
it makes so much sense. It
It
makes so
does.
much sense when describing to somebody what our values are. When it comes, that's really good. Um. Okay, and you've had, I suppose, a lot of experience across different companies and different countries on communication with multinational teams. So, is there anything you would change about how companies approach communication? So, across all your experience, is there anything you say, I wish companies would do this when it comes to managing multilingual teams?
I think companies, from my experience, are really trying.
Okay.
Communication, they're all, from every organization I've been with, I can generally say they try and they trial as well. They do not know all the answers, and they come up with one thing and they realize this may not work. We try something else. Sometimes that, though, comes with over communication, in the sense that you get overloaded with so many things. Like, there's a newsletter, there's emails, there's your manager talking about it, there's
Mhm.
whatever else of you have in a company to communicate something, and eventually it's too much, and then you miss things, and then you overread things, or even worse, you get contradictions. Your manager passes it on slightly different to what you read in the newsletter, and then the company all hands says something slightly different again, and that then leads to this entire feeling of being overwhelmed, not knowing, okay, what actually is the message here? Like, what am I
Yeah,
really supposed to do? And yeah, that I would say it's not obviously what they're trying to do. But even for me right now, as I said earlier, there's a lot of change happening, and I'm trying to be mindful on when to communicate certain things, understanding when other departments communicate things, so I don't kind of come at the same time. But yeah, it's difficult, and the bigger the company, the more
of course.
international it is, the harder it obviously gets to really have a communication strategy and to line on who does what at what point in time.
Especially with 20,000 employees.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Um, Thank you so much, Nadia. We always finish off the podcast with this one question.
Mhm.
So, for anyone who's a HR leader now or in the HR space, learning and development training for multilingual teams, and they're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed with their job right now, is there any piece of advice that you would give for people feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, I probably, yeah, I have to again agree with your other guest that you mentioned earlier. I think it's being curious in your vulnerability and in your insecurity. We do not have all the answers, then
Hmm.
that's probably for many people the hardest thing to learn. That it's also okay not to have all the answers. But in that insecurity, you need to be curious and ask questions genuinely, not because you're nosy, not because you're arrogant or anything,
Hmm.
but just because you genuinely want to know, almost like, children when 4 year olds ask you 500 questions a day because
Yes.
they want to find out. I think that's what we also need to do, and ask other people questions. How do you want me to communicate with you? What works for you? What doesn't? And yeah, seek to understand what is the best way forward. And you might be surprised what you uncover when you
Yeah.
actually ask rather than making assumptions. Yeah.
We definitely lose that as we get older, and go through more workplaces and more experience. We definitely lose that kind of curiosity. So I think definitely that's a lovely thing to take away from today, is to be more curious and ask more questions genuinely and listen to the answers too.
Yes, that too.
That's important. That's important.
Definitely.
Nadia, thank you so much for coming on today. That's been really insightful. I'll be stealing a few things from you.
Go for it. Go
um,
for it.
thank you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
That brings us to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and subscribe. You can also find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you the next time.